Hey everybody, this is the Words Don't Fit the Picture, the show where we untangle the strange and fascinating relationship between gender, voice, and identity. When it comes to the topic of voice and gender, it can be easy to get lost in the weeds of the gender binary, talking about what makes a voice sound more masculine or more feminine to our ears. We tend to think in extremes, but that thinking often overlooks everything in the middle. In this case, that includes non-binary, two-spirit people, and other gender expressions that just don't fall into one of those nodes on either end. And they all have voices too. So I'm here today with Ivan Coyote, who is an incredible writer, storyteller, and performer. They've written novels, made films, produced live shows, and albums of music and storytelling. I read their book of letters, Care Of, around the time that I came out myself. It was a period of time when the world felt really scary to me and my future very uncertain. But knowing that there were kind, empathetic queer people out there and reading about the breadth of their experiences, both good and bad, helped me take those first steps. At the time, I wondered what Ivan might have written back to me had I sent them an email in those early scary months, so I'm really excited to get to speak with them today. Welcome, Ivan.
Hey, Jess. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
It's going great. I'm so glad we finally got to be here to talk.
I know, it's been a while.
It's been a long time coming, and there's like so much I want to talk to you about.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm really excited. Okay, so a question that I want to ask off the top. There's obviously no such thing as like a voice that's good or bad, but I'm wondering, do you have a favorite voice? So like a singer or a public speaker, like anybody out there whose voice you just really love the sound of?
Oh, many. Yeah, many. Chantal, she's sometimes a CBC. She's like I would say, like, I don't know, I have never had that conversation with her, but she's like, she reads to me as kind of butch. She might be heterosexual. I've never, like I said, on CBC News, Chantal, I like her voice. Like singer wise, oh, there's so many, but Farron, it was one of my like early, like I found a lot of comfort in her quite deep voice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure, like just speaking voice or singing voice, right? Because, you know, I love Chrissy Hines. Oh God, man, if I could sing like Chrissy Hines, it would be, yeah. There's so many. Like one of the things I love about the music of the 70s and Joni Mitchell, I love her voice, but for very different reasons, right? I'm trying to think of male voices that I love. I love some of those like old school, like super uber deep, like radio, you know, this year coming to, you know, a couple of movie announcers, although there's one guy who's just like, dude, you've done enough movie trailers. Like, step aside.
The In a World guy, right?
Yeah.
In a world.
In a world. Well, true. Yeah. So there's so many. Like, I love Prince's voice. I love the vocal range of him. You know, Aretha Franklin, I remember her hearing an interview, and the interviewer was like very earnest and was like, so I've heard tell that your vocal range is 4 octaves, Miss Franklin. Like, is that true? And I think it might have been even on video because I remember her face, although I could have invented that because she was like 5. She has a vocal range of 5 octaves.
That's wild.
So baller how she said it too. Like, yeah, 4. That's pretty good. 5.
No big deal.
Yeah, and I love her voice.
That's so great. I've asked everyone I've interviewed so far this question, and you have by far like the most answers, which I just love. Like so many different people were like, I love this and I love this. Let's talk a little bit about like, I guess, voices and how they make us feel. So maybe to start off, what is your relationship with your voice like?
Oh, well, I use it for work. I use it for a living. You know, it's a big part of my tools I'm a storyteller and a live performer, and I sing sometimes and talk a lot, as you've already probably noticed. It's pretty important to me for work-wise. It's also like, I don't know where I actually sit in the range of it all. Like, I think I have a alto-ish voice. I don't love those categories because they're very gendered unto themselves. I don't know if you've seen that video going around on Instagram of the like soprano soloist who's like super obviously non-binary, wearing like
No.
rocking like a hot butch floral button down shirt and like the brand new fade, and then just killing it like high soprano with a big orchestra. It's like really cool. And right now I'm singing in a choir that I helped to start up at Yukon University. It's like a drop-in choir for faculty and staff and students. So it's very range. It's very drop-in. It's pretty casual. But the choir conductor is awesome, Erica D. Ma, Mahdee. If you want to check out her work, she's a great musician too. And she's got killer pitch, but she doesn't gender any of it. She's like lows, mids, highs. And people kind of self-select, and it's amazing because we've got a guy who's, to my knowledge, very cisgender male, father of 3 kids, David, and he's got a very natural, beautiful, supremely in tune falsetto, and so he sings with the highs when we're low on highs, if you know what I mean. Low
Absolutely.
on highs. But I really like that, and I can sing a little bit. I can, if I'm not as good at it, like pitch wise, and it's not my natural range, but if I practice the tracks, I can sing the high parts often. And it's really interesting because there's like people who visually you would go, oh, well, they're female presenting, feminine presenting folks, and they're over singing with the lows, and they're doing a great job. So just even like expanding the language that we use, I think enables everybody, regardless of their gender identity, to find a better place for them to sing. What a great thing is that? Like, just to find a comfortable place to sing, because often the low parts are a little bit simpler too, and they function as bass notes, right? So they're just sometimes drones. So for somebody who is just getting into singing, it might be really easier for them, or more comfortable for them to so anyway. And then I also wanted to say I'm having a thing right now in my throat. I have it's called a parathyroid adenoma. It's a tumor, but it's not cancer, but it's on my parathyroid gland. And so it's affecting I have to clear my throat a lot. I feel like it's making my range a bit smaller, but I have to have an operation, and they have to cut my throat. They said maximum 2 inches.
Oh my gosh.
Then he also said, you'll have a scar, but we'll hide it in the already existing wrinkle in your neck, which I think is supposed to be comforting. I don't know. Anyway, so and there's a slim chance, although I've got a very skilled surgeon, there's a slim chance because the parathyroid glands are very close to and are sometimes entwined in your vocal cord nerve. So I could have my voice changed or stretched, which I think would make it lower by my physics, and or I could lose my voice. But I have to get rid of this thing because it can have long-term health effects on multiple things like bone density and kidney health and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, so I've been pondering. It's funny that we should do this right now because I'm literally, the phone could ring from the endocrinologist referring me right now. He's got all my blood work and stuff like that and my last round of tests. And yeah, so what else did I want to say? Because I've been thinking about this.
Yeah.
My voice is often not so much anymore because I think aging is making me look less like a teenage boy and more like an old woman. And just things like hips and stuff like that, and maybe visibility of queer people a little bit. So people might be able to more easily spot kind of a transmasculine or mask of center female assigned person a little easier. Maybe it's the gray hair. maybe it's that I just don't give a fuck anymore, and I wear pink all the time because I've always liked it. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I get clocked less as a just passing as a man, although very pretty man, but just kidding. I don't pass like I used to, and I know that's problematic language, but or it can be problematic for some, but people often see me as different than they used to maybe 15 years ago. And but my experience growing up, pretty much being a masculine of center presenting person my entire life, since I was from what I can tell, like 1 or 2 years old, I always, like, the pictures of me when I was a kid are wearing my dad's boots, buck naked from the waist up. Just like all the little girls in the street all dressed in their dresses. I'm wearing like red and black rubber boots and bell bottoms and like my Davy Crockett fringe buckskin leather jacket, and they all have like their little backpacks, and I have a briefcase. Like, I'm 5 years old, and I won't stand with the girls, and I'm very angry about having to get my picture taken at all. Like, this has been my life, right? But my voice has always been my tell. Like, in the period of my life, which I would say be maybe 20 to 40 years old, when I was most often just would sort of be able to just look like a white dude, just look like a kind of a close shaven white dude wearing a shirt and tie. When I would get the most hassles if I went into women's spaces, and I would often go into men's spaces and be completely like, nobody would give me a second look unless I talked.
Right.
My voice was always my tell. So yeah, I learned to drop my voice like out of safety reasons when I needed to, or just hardly talk at all. Just be like, I'm just a dude who has to, for some reason, sit down to pee in the men's washroom and just don't make eye contact and don't talk. Or just be like, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Hey, or do whatever, like affect, whatever kind of, I don't know if this is making any sense at all, but
no, it makes total sense. And I mean, in so many ways, that's the inverse of like what I experience a lot of the time, right? Which is, I mean, I'm tall, and that often makes me stick out a little bit in a crowd. But much of the time, it's not until I speak that I get kind of a look of, oh, that's not what I expected necessarily from people. And washrooms can have that effect as well. And so it's interesting to hear you talk about that other side of things. You described how your voice used to feel like a tell. Do you feel like you experienced dysphoria around your voice, or did it feel more like a frustration that your voice was in some way revealing something you didn't want people to know?
Neither, actually, in a way. Like, it was my tell, so I had to be, if I was in a place where I felt unsafe, I would be conscious of it being a tell, but like, that's on them, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like I've worked really hard in my life to try to make space for bodies like mine, for people like me, for voice, I just remember one time, like, my friend was running she's like an agent, like a talent agent, or like for film and television and stuff like that. We started talking about whether or not I could audition for this like BC local fruit, ironically, like eat local fruit or something like that. And she was like, but you have kind of a trans voice. And I was like, I don't think I have a trans voice. She's a cisgender butch woman. I think I'm not sure how she would identify right now, but I mean, the last time I checked, and I'd never been really told that I had a trans voice before, but I don't know, like, I don't know how people hear or what they see or how it affects, because in a way your voice is your tell and my voice is my tell. So it's sort of opposite but sort of not when you really think about it. I don't know.
I guess that makes me think the idea of a trans voice in and of itself, like voices are voices, like there's a huge variety of voices
Yeah.
in pitch and volume and sound and accent and all of these other things and vocabulary and speech patterns. But until you pair that voice with an image, I feel like it's just a voice. And so I guess I'm wondering what you think. Like, do you think that there is a such thing as like a non-binary voice or a trans voice when you divorce the sound from the picture?
I don't know. I know that they're very like intrinsically connected. I also know that misogyny and homophobia and transphobia run so deep in us that I know lots of gay men who have affected that there are cisgendered gay men, but they, or not even gay, like cisgender, more feminine presenting. Like I love that we're getting into these nuances now, right? Because we equate a cisgender man with a high voice. Everybody will call the first thing the first thing that they're going to call him, right? And on the schoolyard, and so how do we separate from us being, and I use this word intentionally, violently forced into gender boxes and every kind of gender presentation from, sorry, I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking at
it's
you.
Okay.
How do we differentiate between how we developed our natural speaking voices versus, those of us who didn't present as gender conforming, literally having like in assigned male, like folks, but more feminine presenting or whatever. Like I know lots of men who grew up deepening their voice, so that they wouldn't get the shit kicked out of them on a kindergarten or grade 2 playground. Like, so it's hard to know, like, although I just heard my voice crack there. Well, it's stressful times to ponder all this heading into what's surely going to be another 4 years. And, Trump shat in everyone's pool in 2016. And even going back to a democratic government for 4 years, for whatever that, we could get into that, but let's not. And for 4 years, we didn't magically step back to 2016 in terms of trans rights or like hatred and transphobia. So, and like, even cisgendered feminine presenting women, if they have a very high vocal range, they receive a kind of misogyny. Like I have a friend, I'm not going to say her name, but I have a friend she's super smart and she has killer technical skills. She designs websites. She's got a math brain. She does a lot of financial stuff in her work. But she's got a very, very high, almost childlike quality to her voice. And I see the way people talk to her, and it's so misogynist. And, so I think I don't know, I think this affects all of us, this genderizing of voices, or attaching like expectations of behavior on people based on, how all this goes together. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, I think you did. I mean, I do think you're onto something there in that we're becoming certainly more aware as a society of the ways that we make assumptions about people based on how they look and trying to unlearn some of those things that we've been taught culturally and familially and all of these ways throughout the years. But I do think that the conversations around voice are a little bit different and a little bit newer. And maybe people are a little bit less aware of the ways that they treat people differently based on the sounds of their voice.
Yeah, I know that like whenever I have to like call so I've had several times, there's just a raven right outside doing a raven thing. If you hear any squawking, they're very vocal. What's he doing?
I love ravens.
Yeah, he might be trying to get at some stew that I have freezing on the anyway, I know that I've several times been clocked by like the bank when I call because I don't sound like an Ivan to them, but that's my legal name. I know lots of trans women who have been like, I'm just thinking of a friend of mine who was traveling in Egypt and her credit card got flagged because it was an unusual spending pattern for her. And so she had to call, I don't know, I don't remember which bank it was in Canada. And they decided that she didn't sound like her name and locked her right out. And,
oh my gosh.
And so she was stuck in Egypt, like waiting. I think she had to get someone to send her some, while they sorted this out. I know the banks have done a little bit of work around this, and you can do the voice recognition thing and have that as your security pattern, as part of your security profile pattern. So there's been some work done on this, but I know that I must have a more so-called feminine sounding voice than I think that I do, because often people will be like, can I speak to Mr. Ivan Coyote, please? And they've just made an assumption based on my name. And then I'll say, yeah, speaking. And they're like, oh, sorry, ma'am. And I get that all the time too, like getting on planes and everything like that. They take the extra double take looking at me. And you'd like to get all haughty with them and go like, you're not allowed to, but they actually are allowed to discriminate against you if they don't think that your ID matches your name, or that like so I just, when it comes to, I just try to tone down the attitude at any time in an airport. Cause I just want to I'm usually going to talk about trans issues, so ironically, yeah, I had this guy one time in Calgary airport, Katzegard. There's pink button, blue button. They look at it and they just they don't check your ID. They just like make it, and then they press the button and you walk through the thing. And there's all it's a form of a CAT scan, I believe, or an MRI. No, it's an MRI. And it does this kind of complicated series of algorithms on you. And it always tells me that I'm missing a dangling participle. And I don't have enough fatty deposits up here for the pink button, and I got a little too much junk in the trunk for the blue button, and my thighs are not the right length for, like, there's all these different cofactors, and so I just light those things up like a pink and blue Christmas tree, and I always get patted down. So this is before I changed my name, and legally. And so I flag all the things, and then he's forced with like, oh God, boarding pass. They don't look at your ID, but he's like, who do I get to pat this person down? Because you're allowed to have a person of your gender, right? And so
good luck.
That's what I always say. Like, good luck. You're in Calgary and it's 4:30 in the morning. Like, I dare you to find somebody of my same gender. Like, would that I could. And and so he said, I said, I'm trans. So, you pick. I don't like, just pick somebody who's respectful. I don't need to be patted down by somebody of my, like, whatever. And he goes, yeah, I was just at the Calgary International Writers Festival. And there was one of the writers there was like that. Ivan Coyote, ever heard of them? And I was like, or I think he probably said, ever heard of him back then. And I said, because I changed my name about 10 years ago. But I said, yeah, that's me, right? And then I see that guy. He's a volunteer every time I go to Calgary International Writers Festival. He's always like working the bar or like in the hospitality room or driving the shuttle or whatever. He's like a long-term dedicated, and he loves to tell that story too, about the time he patted me down, because he had looked at my boarding pass, but it was in my dead name, right? So
oh my gosh.
Anyway,
yeah,
I don't know what this has to do with voice, but
no, it's so fascinating. And I mean, I do have to ask, was it a respectful pat down?
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, I wish I could remember his name. That's the other thing too, is try to go through menopause. I went on a. Can I swear on this?
No, unfortunately.
I went on a stupid bleepy bleep 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 Facebook support group for menopause because I was having like acute insomnia, and they kicked me out based on because my name and my little tiny round picture. They were like, get out of here. We're trying to have one space, not, where men aren't coming in to tell us to mansplain things. And so I was like, okay, I'll leave. But
where are you supposed to go?
Yeah, you just got to find other masculine presenting, ovary still having non-binary and or trans people that are not taking testosterone, that are the same age as you, in the same place in their menopausal journey. I mean, how hard could that be, right, Jess?
Yeah, a bit of a small Venn diagram by the end of the day.
Although I have found some, so
that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Coming back to, I guess, voice a little bit. Like,
yeah.
How often do you think about how other people perceive your speaking voice these days?
Well, back to menopause for a second. You get a certain age in your life where you just don't give. You just don't. In the same way that you might. So I would say I spend a lot of time thinking about my own voice heading into this surgical kind of procedure and stuff like that. I hope that the surgeon will spend some time thinking about my voice. And then pretty much everybody else, they can sort their own things out. They can sort their own things out. And, I get recognized for my voice. I've had people like on the road stopping for gas in Saskatchewan and going into like the little kiosk thing to get like a bottle of water or whatever I was buying and get my receipt because the machine was out of paper to give you a gas receipt to write off your taxes. And somebody some woman in her 80s in the middle of nowhere in Saskatchewan going, excuse me, but, I overheard you talking, and are you Ivan Coyote? So, that's cool. And yeah, I am. Oh, I heard you on CBC, or audiobooks. I'm doing audiobooks now. Like Care of and Rebent Sinner, and I did Tomboy Survival Guide. And of course, I'm not going to let anyone else, narrate my books for me. And because they're so, like, my writing is in my voice. My voice is in my writing. My stories are in my voice. My voice affects my sentence structure, my pacing. It's pretty important to me as to like how much time I spend thinking about what someone else thinks about my voice. Unless I'm singing, then I care. My singer friends, I like, when I do playlists, I'm like very aware that, some of my like heavy duty singer friends are in the audience, and I'm like Erica at the choir can, that'll make me nervous. I care about that I'm singing in tune, but like as to my identity in my voice, I would say I spend little to no time wondering about that these days. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which is it's a luxury, except for safety considerations.
Right.
Bathrooms, I'll be like, I'm still not above like making my friend go in and pretending I need to borrow a tampon in the highest voice I can. Like, hi, Jennifer, just wondering, can I borrow a tampon? And I don't need a tampon. I haven't needed a tampon for a while. So sorry, are we allowed to say tampon?
Yeah.
Is that a swear word? Just kidding.
No. if that's a swear word, I don't want to be on this planet anymore.
Right.
So that that makes me think about a conversation that I had with my dad while we were having lunch about a month and a half ago, and he asked me, because I was talking to him about doing this podcast and that I was working on it, and he asked me like, are you gonna try and change how your voice sounds beyond how it sounds now, and like, do you experience dysphoria around it? And I kind of realized as I answered him that there really were three different situations for me that felt really different, and that I had different opinions towards in each one. And so I'll say what those are, and then I'm kind of curious whether you have a similar perspective or different. On one hand, there's the one you've already spoken to, which is the safety one, where I'm like, I wish I was able to be in situations where safety was a concern based on how my gender was perceived, and be safe. So that's like the obvious one. I'd love to be able to do that. It feels really important for so many reasons. And then there's number two, which is how others perceive my gender purely from like an identity and validation point of view, where like it's frustrating to move through the world and get misgendered constantly. It can have a really negative effect on your psyche, and sometimes on the actual things you're experiencing. And so it would be nice to be gendered correctly when I was speaking. And then this third one is like, if I lived in a cabin in the woods alone for the entire rest of my life, and the only other person there was my cat, how would I want my voice to sound? And that one I almost find the hardest to answer, because so much of identity is tied into others' perceptions of me. So I'm curious for you, you've talked about safety. We've talked a little bit about you not caring as much about how other people perceive you these days, which I think is really cool and really freeing, and I'm a little envious of, to be perfectly honest. But I'm curious about that third one. If you lived in a cabin alone with just an animal of your choice for the rest of your life, and you could sing, you could speak, you could do whatever you wanted, but there was no human ear around to hear you, how would you like your voice to sound?
Okay, so first of all, if I might just speak to one thing for point number two.
Yeah.
Which is, I think there's an obvious difference that we need to speak to more about the consequences of being misgendered as a trans feminine person versus the consequences of being misgendered often, not always, and of course there are exceptions, but I think safety wise, back to point number one, I know that there's a lot more physical violence that happens to trans feminine presenting people because of, like we talked about, misogyny, transphobia, consequences for which gender box you're experimenting with broadening, all these reasons, right? So given that, and looking at you, I find it even more disturbing and abhorrent that somebody would misgender you. Like, it's, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to, like, when we began the conversation, I asked, which pronoun. I said she and they because, and I guess I should have said, I guess I should have said maybe he too, because I don't want to make assumptions about somebody based on how they're looking, but I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. People, just that sometimes cis people suck so hard, and we're supposed to just continually just step up and be polite and be patient. Like, really? Really? They're gonna override every other visual and emotional and whatever clue to how you might identify, and I find that I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that because I know that the dangers are different for and again, not exclusively. It's so hard to talk about this stuff because somebody's always going to pipe in and say, but I'm trying to navigate a hard to talk about question, I think, or hard to talk about topic, and really offer us, just out of compassion for each other, the kindness of trying to see each other truly as who we are somehow, how to talk about those things. I'm not sure if I'm being very eloquent. Back to the cabin in the woods. So I've been in a cabin in the woods. I live in the Yukon. I've been a lot, and I was in Atlin I bought that place in a little chunk of property in Atlin. I bought it in 2018, and I was building a little cabin, and I bought it. Anyways, doesn't matter. But I spent a lot of time 200 kilometers away from a decent cell signal. And so I had a lot of time to ponder my own voice. Let's just say that. If anything with my voice, I wish I had better pitch, but that's my ears. And that's back to singing. You know, I really am jealous of people who have perfect pitch. And I don't think I would really. If anything, I wish I had more range. I wish I could speak lower than I can, and sing higher than I can, and sing lower. So I guess I just want to I just want to have a five octave range like Aretha Franklin, you know, rather than change my voice as it is. I don't know. It's just a part of me. And I hate that we have to change something or feel pressure to conform to other people's things in any way. What? So that we can take a piss and go to the swimming pool or try on a pair of pants at the bay, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, and rant.
No, it's a great rant, and I do think you handled a difficult topic eloquently. And it's so, what you're saying resonates with me so strongly, because I do feel honestly really similar about my voice in a lot of ways. Like, I have been using this instrument my whole life, and I've been using this voice as long as I have had it, and it's changed a little bit over the years, but I'm really good at using it, and I know how to use it, and I know how other people perceive it most of the time. But when I came out, a lot of that got thrown out of whack, and people's perceptions of it, when accompanied by what they were seeing, did change a little bit. And so I do feel this frustration of like, why do I have to recalibrate my instrument? My instrument hasn't changed. The things I'm trying to say haven't fundamentally changed. But, you know, it doesn't look like a tuba anymore. So you're surprised when a tuba sound comes out of a trumpet. I don't know. That's a terrible analogy. I'm sorry.
I think you look more like a clarinet. Which I love clarinets. I've always loved clarinets. What instrument do I look like?
What instrument do you look like?
Yeah.
You look like a saxophone.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like
Which
a tenor
one,
sax.
A tenor sax. Okay. I'll
versatile.
Accept. Maybe if I was standing up, you'd see a Barry, which is my instrument that I actually play. Did you know that?
I used to play Barry as well.
What?
Yeah. I played a little bit of tenor and Barry in my high school jazz band.
Wow. Yeah. Started off on the alto, then I found my true love, the Barry, and then tenor as well. I've literally left the alto behind in storage in Vancouver, and I've got a tenor and two Barrys in the basement, a low A and a low B flat. I'm rich with saxophones.
What was it like coming out as a baritone saxophone player?
Oh, I mean, come on. It's the best instrument in the world. Next, it and the bass guitar. Like, I like the low end, hey? Like,
yep.
That's where I sit in the grand scheme of the band. Yeah.
That's so fun. Do you think that ties is there any connection between your gender identity and that, do you think?
I mean, you just said I was a saxophone. I just said I felt that you were a B flat clarinet. So, I don't know, you decide.
I appreciate that. A clarinet is one of the few instruments I don't have in my apartment right now, but maybe I'll have to get one.
Played poorly, clarinet's one of my least favorite instruments. Maybe it and the violin. Played perfectly, played beautifully. It's one of the most gorgeous voices in you know, I mean, there's so many. Like, I mean, nothing kind of touches a French horn. Actually, nothing sort of touches a tuba, you know, in a way, I have to say. I don't think that you were ever a tuba, my friend. I just don't buy that.
I appreciate it. If we go back far enough, I did sing the super high soprano solo from Loch Lomond in my elementary school choir. And then I did find myself singing the sort of bass parts in my vocal jazz group. So I've definitely run the gamut. But
okay. So was that your like trans moment of awareness when you sang the super high parts?
I mean,
partly
my voice changing was something that was really difficult for me.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, I had such a hard time with it. All of my favorite voices growing up were very like feminine sounding vocalists. I also listened to a lot of Joni Mitchell growing up. I do like a lot of male vocalists, but they tend to sing higher up in their range. I grew up listening to Paul Simon and James Taylor. Who are both, you know, they have those like.
Hold on, how old are you? You must have been at your parents' records, not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 33, and
it was your parents, James Taylor, right? Or like
they shared that music with me, but like I grew to love it. I've seen Paul Simon. I think I've seen, you know, his 3 farewell tours or whatever, which was
I've always wanted
such a joy.
I should have said him too. Oh, what's your
Yeah.
favorite Paul Simon song? I know this has nothing to do with our podcast.
Okay, favorite song is so hard. I come back to Hearts and Bones all the time, which I know is controversial because it's off his objectively probably least commercially successful album, but it's a beautiful song.
No, his least commercially successful album was Songs of the Cape Man.
Okay, that's fair.
Ooh. You know that one?
I love Cape Man. Yeah.
Oh,
I love Cape Man.
Oh my God.
I do.
Are we cousins? What's happening here?
Cape Man, the reason I like Cape Man is I discovered it late because we didn't have the record growing up, and so there were the couple songs from it that were on the greatest hits albums.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
because I didn't really know about it, it was a surprise when I found it like later in my life, and I was like, oh my God, bonus new old Paul Simon songs, and so it was like an exciting thing.
But that whole album is a story.
Yes.
It's the whole story. Like right from the beginning. I learned so much about, like, because I went and read about the character, and I read about Puerto Rico, and I read about like Puerto Rican immigrants to New York. Like there were so many rabbit holes.
Well, I mean, let's talk about music because we're on music. I feel like we could talk about music in general forever, and maybe that just needs to be another call for another time. But
yeah, maybe we have to do a part 2 because okay, so you must have liked playlists then if you were listening to all your parents' records.
I loved playlists. It was so cool. Like, and so this is actually a perfect segue into talking about that because I did want to ask you about playlist. Like, okay. I for people who are watching this, Ivan has put together this amazing show playlist where they go through the songs that I shouldn't describe it. You should describe it.
Well, they're stories. They're 11 interlinked stories, but they're at their core is a mention, or the story is, you know how when you hear a song, one of the things I love about songs is that, like, take, for instance, Slip Sliding Away. Okay. That's gonna take me back to a certain bunch of now stories because it's been a song that I've listened to. Farron, Shadows on a Dime. Veda Hilly. Oh, another one of my favorite voices. Veda Hilly. There's so many, like, I've listened to those songs. They've been on my playlist for so many decades now that now I have like a whole folding, like, what do you call those folders that like they expandable folder of stories that belong to that song. They're all stories that are connected to a song that was on my playlist when I was a kid, that if I had the better words for it, I would have called like queer coded. I would have called like any sign of trans life in the 70s and 80s growing up. Right. And, so they're stories that I found some kind of like representation in, for good or bad. Right. Because not all of them are like politically unproblematic songs. I mean, I've heard the Kids Take a Walk on the Wild Side. And, but for me, that song was like a sign of life, a sign of a potential future. And Lou Reed, he had a trans lover, and he was out about that in the 70s and identified still as a straight man. So to me, he was trans affirming in his own way. It might not be politically dissectable, in 2024 in the same way. But, when I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, when I first heard that song, in 1979, it was a big deal for me. It was a big deal because Jackie was just speeding away. She thought she was James Dean for a day. Like, I was like, hold the phone, cut, back it up. Tell me more about just Jackie. Not to mention, the other queer coded characters in that song. Right. Mm-hmm. Anyway, playlist. We were talking about playlists. It's stories that are connected to songs that I found myself in somehow. Yeah.
Hey everybody, there's a lot more still to come in my conversation with Ivan, but we're gonna save it for the next episode. So coming up, we're gonna talk about finding gender identity in music and movies, bucking the old narratives, how to deal with all the dark stuff happening in the world today, and how to find and build community close to you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for part 2.